92 Olympic Winter Games. Next, CBS Sports presents the NCAA Basketball Championship Selection Show.
CBS Sports presents the NCAA Tournament Selection Show, sponsored by Pizza Hut and their new MVP 4-topping pizza.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Nance in New York, along with Billy Packer and Mike Francesa. We are moments away from learning which 64 teams will embark upon the road to the Final Four and what paths they will have to take. But before we head out to Kansas City for the live announcement of the tournament pairings, let's quickly update you on two conference championships that just concluded about a half hour ago. First, in the Southwest Conference, the Razorbacks of Arkansas ripped off a 19-2 run to start the second half and win the SWC championship and revenge over Texas, who had beaten them a week ago. Alabama beats Tennessee, preventing the Volunteers with 21 losses making the field. The Volunteers would have set the all-time record in losses making the field, and they won that game today. All right, without much further ado, let's go out to Kansas City, where Greg Gumbel is there to take the honors away from us. Greg, do it to us, please.
All right, Jim, thank you, and welcome to Kansas City, everyone, where it's been the hub of basketball activity for the last couple of days, and as Jim Nance says, without further ado, let's first tell you about the 4 #1 seeds in the tournament. Here they are. North Carolina is the #1 seed in the East region. Arkansas, the #1 in the Southeast. In the Midwest, it's the Buckeyes of Ohio State, and in the West, it's top-ranked and unbeaten UNLV. So those are the top teams. Now here's how the bracket looks, and we will begin in the East with Thursday games first at College Park, Maryland. The #6 seed Wolfpack of North Carolina State. Great job that Les Robinson has done in his first season out of the Atlantic Coast Conference. They'll match up against the Golden Eagles of Southern Mississippi, making their second straight appearance. The 3rd seed, Oklahoma State Cowboys. Coach Eddie Sutton becomes the first coach to take 4 different schools to the tournament. The Cowboys will meet the Lobos of New Mexico in with a 20-9 mark out of the WAC. Coach Gene Katie's Purdue Boilermakers are the #7 seed in the East, making their 8th appearance in the last 9 years, and they'll take on the Temple Owls at 22-10 out of the Atlantic 10. #2 seed in the East, Syracuse. The Orangemen, winning their first ever outright regular season Big East Conference, making their 8th straight appearance in the NCAA, will play the Richmond Spiders, the tournament champions in the Colonial Athletic Association. Now, Friday games in Syracuse, New York. Top seed, North Carolina. The Tar Heels winning today over Duke at 25-5 on the year. They'll take on #16 Northeastern, the Huskies regular season and tournament champions in the North Atlantic Conference. 8th seeded Princeton. The Tigers, undefeated in Ivy League play this year, take on the Wildcats of Villanova out of the Big East. 5th seeded in the East, the Bulldogs of Mississippi State. Last 2 seasons, they finished 8th in the SEC. Coach Richard Williams turns them around to a 20-8 mark this year, and they'll take on the Hurons of Eastern Michigan, the Mid-American Conference regular season and tournament champions. The Bruins of UCLA pull in the #4 seed in the East out of the Pac-10, and they'll take on Penn State, the Nittany Lions, the Atlantic 10 Conference tournament champions, their last year in the Atlantic 10 before they move on to the Big Ten. Now, the winner out of the East will take on the winner of the Southeast at the Final Four, and these are Thursday games in Louisville, Kentucky. The Big East sends the Pitt Panthers in as the #6 seed, and they'll face the Bulldogs of Georgia out of the SEC Hugh Durham squad, 17-12 on the year. The #3 seed, the Jayhawks of Kansas. They won this tournament, you'll recall, in 1988. They'll play the Privateers of the University of New Orleans, who enjoyed a 17-game winning streak this season in the American South Conference. The Florida State Seminoles, the tournament champions in the Metro, the #7 seed, taking on 10th seeded Southern Cal, and George Raveling, it's his 3rd team to go to the tournament in addition to Washington State and Iowa. And Bob Knight's Indiana Hoosiers, the #2 seed in the Southeast, making their 20th appearance. They'll play Coastal Carolina, champions in the Big South Conference, and then beat Jackson State in one of the NCAA's play-in games. Now, continuing on in the Southeast in Atlanta, these are Friday and Sunday games. #1 seed, Arkansas. The Razorbacks will play the Panthers of Georgia State, the tournament champions out of the Trans-America Conference and making their first NCAA appearance. 8th seed, Arizona State. The Sun Devils enjoying a winning season for the first time since the 82-83 season. They'll play Rutgers, the regular season champions in the Atlantic 10. The Demon Deacons of Wake Forest, the #5 seed, making their first appearance since 1984. They'll play American South tournament champion Louisiana Tech. Alabama's Crimson Tide, SEC tournament champions, Coach Wimp Sanderson brings them in against the Racers of Murray State, 4-time defending champs out of the Ohio Valley Conference. Now remember, it'll be the East against the Southeast in the Final Four, and that's half the bracket. We'll take a time out here, and when we come back to Kansas City, we'll bring you up to date on how it looks in the other two regions, and we continue in just a moment. These are the Midwest and the West regions, and we'll begin with Midwest play Thursday in Minneapolis. And 6th-seeded, the LSU Tigers, making their 8th straight appearance out of the SEC. And Coach Dale Brown will take on Coach Jim Calhoun and the Connecticut Huskies, who finished strong in the Big East regular season play. Danny Nee and the Nebraska Cornhuskers pull down the number 3 seed out of the Big 8, and they'll play the Musketeers of Xavier. Pete Gillen, 6th year at the school. He's gone to the tournament each year. This year he's got a record of 21-9. Out of the Big 10, the Iowa Hawkeyes with a 20-10 mark will take on the Buccaneers of East Tennessee State, who won their 3rd straight Southern Conference tournament. 28 victories this season, a new school record. Coach Mike Krzyzewski's Duke Blue Devils, the number 2 seed in the Midwest, regular season Atlantic Coast Conference champions, Final Four team for the last 5 years. They'll play the Indians of Northeast Louisiana, Southland Conference regular season and tournament champions, and winners of the play-in game against Florida A&M. Now, Friday games in Dayton, Ohio, in the Midwest. Top-seeded Ohio State, the Buckeyes, Big Ten Conference champions, taking on the Tigers of Towson State, the East Coast Conference champions, both regular season and the postseason tournament. Georgia Tech is the number 8 seed. Making their 7th straight appearance in the NCAA, they'll take on the only independent school in the draw this year, the Blue Demons of DePaul, making their 19th appearance. They're 20-8 overall on the season. 5th seed, the Texas Longhorns, enjoying a 20-win season for the 3rd straight year, and they'll play the Peacocks of St. Peter's, who won the Metro Atlantic Conference tournament and draw their first NCAA bid in 60 years of basketball. 4th seed, St. John's, the Redmen, out of the Big East Conference with a 27th straight trip to a postseason tournament. They'll play the Huskies of Northern Illinois at 27-5 on the year, and the regular season champions in the Mid-Continent. Now, Thursday games in the West. We'll go first to Salt Lake City, where 6th seed New Mexico State Aggies, 23-5 on the year, a 3rd straight 20-plus win season. They'll face the Blue Jays of Creighton, Missouri Valley Conference regular season and tournament champions, and winners of 15 of their last 16 games coming down the stretch. The Pirates of Seton Hall, the Big East Conference tournament champions, draw the 3rd seed, 22-8 on the year, and they'll play Pepperdine, the West Coast Conference regular season and tournament champs there. They enjoyed a 16-game winning streak during the season. The 7th seed in the West, the Cavaliers of Virginia. Out of the ACC, they'll play the BYU Cougars, the WAC tournament champions, and they have to play on Thursday, Saturday site. They can't play on Sunday. That Mormon religion prohibits that. Number 2 seed in the West, the Wildcats of Arizona, out of the Pac-10, regular season champions there. Lute Olson, 8 years at Arizona, 7 tournament appearances. They'll play the Red Flash of St. Francis, Pennsylvania, 24-7, regular season tournament champs in the Northeast Conference, and another play-in winner. Now, in the West, on Friday, these games will be played in Tucson, Arizona, and they'll feature the top-seeded Runnin' Rebels of Nevada, Las Vegas, Big West Conference tournament champions, unbeaten in 29 games. And they'll play the Grizzlies of Montana, the tournament champions out of the Big Sky Conference, 23-7 on the year. The Georgetown Hoyas, questions are whether or not they would have gotten in this year. A strong showing in the Big East tournament. They are the number 8 seed in the West, making their 13th straight tournament appearance, and they'll play the Commodores of Vanderbilt out of the SEC. The 5th seed Michigan State Spartans out of the Big 10, and the Wisconsin Green Bay, the Fighting Phoenix, 24-6 on the year, and the tournament champions in the Mid-Continent, making their first tournament appearance. The Runnin' Utes of Utah out of the WAC, the regular season champions there, they set a school mark with 28 victories this season, and they'll take on the Jaguars of South Alabama, regular season and tournament champions in the Sun Belt Conference. They sport a record of 22-8. Now, you want to look at the teams that, or the conferences that showed up with the best teams and the most teams in the tournament. Here's a breakdown. The Big East Conference showed 7 teams in the tournament so far. 7 teams, the ACC with 6, the Southeastern Conference with 5, and the Big 10 and the Pac-10 with 4. The Big 8 Conference has 3 teams in, and as we said, 1 independent team, and that is DePaul University. Those teams considered to have been on the bubble and are not included in the 64-team draw include Providence, Houston, Fordham, Alabama Birmingham, the Bearcats of Cincinnati, and the Explorers of LaSalle, who finished with a 20-10 mark. Plenty of questions? Well, we'll hand them over to Jim Delaney, who heads up the men's basketball committee and who's been hard at work the last couple of days to come up with this tournament situation. We'll also have some questions back in New York as well. So right now, let's turn it back to Jim Nantz, Billy Packer, and Mike Francesa. Guys?
All right, Greg, thank you very much. And folks, did you see it? That potential second-round game, Georgetown against UNLV on the second-round Sunday. Wow. All right, let's put it in perspective for you. The West and the Midwest are on the same side of the bracket. That'll be your semifinal matchup at the Final Four. On the other side, it's East against Southeast. We'll come back, get the viewpoints from Coach Packer and Coach Francesa as we continue on the road to the Final Four on CBS in just a moment. In terms of difficulty of brackets. Yeah, on what issue? Mike, run them down. Toughest first.
West, Southeast, East, Midwest.
All right.
We agree, Billy?
We agree on that issue.
All right, I'm with you. Coming up, 65 hours of coverage, 64 teams. It takes 63 games to determine your next national champion. We'll have it all for you from tip to trophy. We'll have your ticket to the Final Four right here on CBS. We'll have our first round coverage for you on Thursday and Friday beginning at noon Eastern time, and March Madness goes prime time on Thursday and Friday evening starting at 8 o'clock. For myself, Billy Packer, and Mike Francesa, Greg Gumbel out in Kansas City, all of us here at CBS Sports, we hope you'll stay with us every step of the way on the road to the Final Four.
CBS Sports presentation of the NCAA Tournament Selection Show has been sponsored by Pizza Hut and their new MVP 4-topping pizza.
The East and onto the ACC final that everybody assumed would settle the top seed in the East. Carolina and Duke. And which North Carolina team would show up? The one that was swept by Duke this year and the same team that looked erratic in the tournament wins over Clemson and Virginia? Well, Duke never got the number of the big blue bus that hit them today. Bobby Hurley had a rough afternoon. Picks up the dribble, loses the basketball. Rick Fox, the tournament MVP, steams in for a deuce. Hurley in the first half had no points, 1 assist, and 5 turnovers in the first half. And this time it is Hubert Davis who had 17 points, who's off to the races. And Carolina, the 2 seed, in control. The Heels have their defense. Thomas Hill never saw Derek Phelps from the backside. Swats it away. In that half-court Carolina offense, King Rice. Senior Rick Fox, 56% shooting today for the Heels. And after beating this team by 6 and 14, Mike Krzyzewski loses by 22. Got a technical in the bargain as well. North Carolina at 25-5, the final 96-74. It's the most lopsided ACC final in 23 years and the 5th time that Duke has lost to Carolina in the conference final. So, in the East, the Heels take the top seed. They go to Syracuse. These games are Friday and Sunday. Carolina meets Northeastern. Princeton, all the way up to number 8, meets Villanova, one of those 7 Big East schools. Mississippi State, knocked out of the SEC early on, plays Eastern Michigan. UCLA again will come east to take on Penn State, and they'll have some fans up in Syracuse. The other half of the bracket, Thursday and Saturday. This is in College Park, Maryland. NC State gets a very talented Southern Miss team. Oklahoma State, one of those bubble teams. And yes, the Lobos made it. Purdue, recently, they were on the edge. Hey, they played their way all the way up to a top 7 seed, and they'll play Temple. We'll hear more from Bill Cosby later. Syracuse and Richmond, the Spiders have a history of making life difficult for opponents. I guess if there's a conventional wisdom of the 4 brackets, Rick, it's that the East is the easiest, but it's also the most even, perhaps.
I think it has the most parity. And it's interesting listening to all the so-called experts pick the Final Four, and myself included, trying to pick some, not an expert, but trying to pick this thing. No one's mentioning North Carolina. They are the number 1 seed. They had a great win over Duke, and nobody thinks that they're going to go to the Final Four. I think Syracuse comes out of this region, but I could see Mississippi State, UCLA, North Carolina State, Oklahoma State, Purdue coming out of this region. It has great parity.
Princeton, well up there, number 8. They'll cause some problems early on, assuming they get past Villanova.
Yeah. We will hear more from Coach Pitino on his favorites, his underdogs, and the best opening round matchups, not to mention his pick to win it all. That's a little bit later on during this hour-long edition. We've told you about the Big Ten, the Big West, and the big showdown in the ACC.